The question is, how difficult is it going to be to evict a tenant in 2026? In 2026, that defense is going to be my landlord is lying. Currently, and this is very important, it takes on average 28 weeks to get a tenant out through Section 21. The system is already broken. Lawyers and barristers must be really happy they're about to get a lot of work. The question is, how difficult is it going to be to evict a tenant in 2026, and how are you doing it at the moment? There is a gap that you can still use your current tools and you need to how to use them, but also you need to educate yourself on how the rules are going to change. Let's have a look. There is a great shift in the regulation which just came about is the Renters Bill. And this regulation, the government itself is calling it the major milestone in changes to protect tenants, and in the same way to leave landlords unprotected. And this is important that you pay attention, turn off any distractions, and then understand what are the new challenges to invest in property. Now, the problem now is going to go from a paper problem to a court battle, and I'll explain that in a second. An eviction in 2025, this year, the Section 21 still works and is still to do with paperwork and evidence that you can provide to effectively get a tenant out of your property to evict them. And the way that works is, if you don't know it, you nowadays need to serve a Section 21 to a tenant, and you can do it for no reason, no fault. They don't have to have money in arrears or exhibiting a antisocial behavior. You just can do it, and that's it. It's not easy, but you still do it. Now, this allows at the moment what we could call, in an optimistic way, an accelerated procedure. And that's a key benefit for landlords, which is being removed. And I'll talk to you about that in a second. Now, this is the best case scenario because you can do it without the courts. And the main risk that you have here is a procedural error. That means you didn't provide all the documents required for the tenancy to the tenant, and then you go through Section 21, you wait for the time they need to wait, and when you get to court, they say to you, no, you didn't do the paperwork correctly, you need to start again. That's the big problem. Now, in 2026, there is only going to be Section 8 available. That means that you need to go to court and you need to have a reason to have the property back. Now, the courts or the government have introduced one new reason and some other strengthened ones. One of them is that you need to prove in court that you're going to sell the property, and in the other one is that you need to prove that someone is going to move into the property, either you or a relative, and then you need to prove in a very definitive way not that you are going to do that or your relative are going to do that. Then this basically means that Section 21 is abolished. Section 21 is not going to work anymore. Still can be used, but is now approved by law that is going to be phased in this abolition. Now, 100% of all evictions are going to be through court. So if you imagine now how difficult it is to go through court, if you don't know, just to let you know, one of the bottlenecks in the whole process is the court itself, because they have a lot of work and they don't have enough people to do the evictions. And we'll talk about in a minute how long it's going to take to remove a tenant. So currently it takes to remove a tenant, then this is just going to make things a lot more difficult. Now, the main risk now is not paperwork, it's proving your case and that you have a genuine intention to move in, or somebody relative to move in, or a genuine intention to sell. And that is going to be a battle for landlords. Unfortunately, the government has left landlords unprotected. Personally, I don't think that's fair. Personally, I think there needs to be landlords' rights bill, and hopefully at some point some politician, some leader think about that, because the private rented sector is being hit with all the strength available, and this in the future I would say might cause a crisis or in property. Now in 2026 there is something that I call the big bang, which is when all these changes to regulation are going to come into force. At the moment, the renters bill will start phasing in with additional powers to the councils. That starts in December 27th, 2025. And from then on, the government will tell us when other changes are going to come into force. And that's very important, because you need to know exactly when you need to switch from section 21 now to only section 8. Now let's have a look at this example. You need to sell your property in 2025. Now to sell your property you need to get the tenants out, and you can serve a 2 months notice, section 21, to the tenants, and you can apply for an accelerated procedure. You can do it online, and hopefully the tenants agree, they will move, and then will not pose a problem for you, and they will leave. There are some other requisites to this, but at least you have the chance to say, look, I need the property in 2 months just because I want it. I have no other reason. I don't have to tell you a reason. And then you proceed with the process. The risk on this one is if you do that, the tenant wants to stay and then it starts challenging your paperwork. That's the problem. Now, in 2026, if you're going to sell your property, now you need to serve a 4-month on ground 1A notice. That is that you're selling the property, and then you need to go to court. Regardless, you need to take them to court, and you need to show the judge that you have a genuine intention to sell. You need to prove it. So you need paperwork. You need as much evidence as possible. There is no written protocol or procedure to tell you what exactly documentation you need. Every case might be different, but you need to think about how you're going to prove it, and you'll need a lawyer or a barrister for the process. Now, in 2025, now the defense of a tenant is my landlord made a mistake. If you take them to court in 2026, that defense is going to be my landlord is lying. He's not going to move in. He's not going to sell it. He just wants the property back so he can rent it at a higher price. That's going to be the defense, and that's something you need to take into account. Now, currently, and this is very important, it takes on average 28 weeks to get a tenant out through section 21. 28 weeks, and that's a good number. The system is already broken because that's the medium. Some people can wait a lot more, and some people might wait less. But if you are investing in any kind of investment, you go to the worst case scenario. And if we are talking more than 28 weeks, that's already a lot of time to wait. And if the tenant is not paying, that makes it even worse. Now, the costs of eviction. Nowadays, if you manage to get a tenant out through section 21, you would be paying about £800 to £1,200. That's what you would be paying to get a tenant out if they decide not to go to court. Now in 2026, because you, regardless of the situation, need to take them to court, it's going to cost you about £2,500–4,000. Why? Because it's a standard claim. You need to go to a court hearing. You need a solicitor. And your worst case scenario in 2025 becomes your best case. Lawyers and barristers who do these kind of things must be really happy because they're about to get a lot of work and income. Their business is going to improve. Now, the new landlord traps in 2026, this is because of the renters bill. Thank you, UK government. One of them is to evict, to sell, you cannot give this notice in the first 12 months. That's one of the traps. The other one is that if you try to sell and the sale falls through, your property is going to be banned for relet for 12 months. And here's where there is going to be a lot of properties, in this case, being sold off market, 1-to-1. Unless the government puts something in to have a record and to check that's the case, that means more control, but still they don't have enough resources even to get tenants out. I doubt they're going to do this. But the people will just opt to sell properties off market. That's what will happen. And if the government will tell you, will find you doing this, for example, saying I want my property back because I'm going to sell it, and then you don't sell it, you can get £40,000 in fines maximum. Now, there is another database all your properties need to be subscribed to. This is a landlord database, which you need to register your property that you're renting. And the problem with that is that if you start a Section 8 and you don't register, the whole Section 8 is going to be invalid. So the government, what the government has done is closed the loops to ensure that the control is there as much as possible. And that's something to think about. Now, as a landlord, what actionable strategies do you have? Well, you need to audit at the moment your Section 21 to see if all your paperwork is in place, and then if you need to serve any Section 21 notice, you need to do so. Now, you need to become better at tenant vetting. You're going to take more time checking references, checking the financials, getting a guarantor, making sure that tenant hopefully is got the money to pay the whole tenancy. And unfortunately, with this new regulation, and I've made another video about it, is that you cannot request more than 5 months rent in advance. You can now not request 6 months in advance, is the regulation. And that, again, brings more risk if you're going to accept somebody whose financial situation is not the best. Now, documents, records, you need to become better, develop systems to have better record keeping, better evidence of everything you're doing, communication to tenants. Need to do that, because it's definitely at some point you're going to end up in court, whether you want it or not. That's going to happen. Now, if you have properties in Liverpool or Wirral and you need buy-to-let and HMO management, contact me on WhatsApp 07411 904 124. I can help you with my agency. I can help you manage your properties over there, or I can help you invest in projects in Liverpool and manage the properties in a way all of this is taken into account to reduce the risk in terms of investment in property in the UK. There is always a risk in any type of investment, and by knowing what you're doing, you can actually reduce that risk. Thank you very much.